Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of The End Credits, the podcast where two brothers discuss their thoughts on a film of their choosing. I'm Dominic.
I'm Jonathan.
And today we are talking about Sergio Leone's epic spaghetti western, Once Upon a Time in the West.
Once Upon a Time in the West was directed by Sergio Leone with a release date of December 20th, 1968. Had a runtime of 166 minutes, and it stars Claudia Cardinal, Henry Fonda, Jason Robards, and Charles Bronson. A mysterious stranger with a harmonica joins forces with a notorious desperado to protect a beautiful widow from a ruthless assassin working for the railroad.
Once Upon a Time in the West. I'm really excited to talk about it because I feel like this is years in the making because I always wanted you to see it for the longest time because I believe I saw Once Upon a Time back in high school, and since then I've wanted you to see it. So I'm excited to hear what you have to say about it because for me, I consider it and I put it up there as one of the greatest westerns of all time, and just like with all the things that are involved, and I definitely want to know how you feel about it.
I have mixed feelings about it in some ways. Like I like certain parts, but like dislike other parts. I think maybe it's I wanted to go certain directions, but like they didn't go in these certain directions. So it's like, oh man. It could also be that maybe because of I heard so much good stuff about it that I overhyped it in my mind for like expectation wise.
Yeah.
Even though I probably should have put him a little bit lower, but that's not to say like it's bad to an extent. But maybe my again expectations and stuff were like not on the correct level they should have been. But I want us to talk about some of the good stuff immediately. There's no defending that they're bad or anything like that. It's like definitively everybody agrees it's good, right?
Yeah.
It's like the music, for example, easily the best part of the film.
Great.
Even though it might feel like it might be like four pieces, but with different variations.
Yeah.
I think it's clearly, no contest, the best part of the film.
Yeah.
We talked about it, previously, where it's like there's over 20 actually on the album, but it's they had these variations with the main four characters
Right.
that they kind of played throughout the entire film, and easily probably I think Harmonica's theme is probably the best out of it in my opinion. In comparison, there was you could say Jill's too was really good as well.
I was gonna say that,
but I think Harmonica's is best just because of the whole significance by the end of it technically.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
But definitely what is it's like a toy box type of opening sound for Jill's. What would you call that? I want to say stars, very space. I think
It's very twinkly.
Yeah. I think Super Mario Galaxy-esque opening type of thing.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's that sort of magical intro to it.
It's like a harpsichord. It's like a harpsichord kind of sound. I
Yeah.
think that's what they use too, or at least I've seen a performance where it was a harpsichord where it's got that really nice almost like chime like, and that's what it is.
That's easily the best part in my opinion of her theme, her variation.
It's so good.
Yeah.
I was gonna say just to explain, it's basically four main themes: harmonica, Frank, Cheyenne. And Jill's. I would technically count Morton's character. He has his own theme too, but he's not really the big part of the big four. But he also has his own. Anyway, but for like those four characters, yeah, Harmonica has like a really good theme, and you find out more towards the end and how it builds up and what it means. But yeah, I think I like Jill's the most because it's just so like it's such a great track. It's so beautiful. It's so light. The harpsichord sound is so good, and it's like the definition of romanticizing the West. I feel like when you hear it, you're just like, you want to be out there in the desert riding on a horse and just like ride it off into the sunset and just like looking at the scenery and everything. And it really adds to the mystique and the aura of the Old West. So
I had a feeling that was going to be your favorite piece just because of that opening piece and everything like that.
And then there's a really nice vocal to it as well.
Yeah.
But strangely enough, the Jill's theme, there's like two, but like one of the variations is actually called Jill's America.
Really?
So yeah, so like with that, it's almost kind of like looking and seeing it through her eyes. So that's like a nice, like, it's a great title because that's what you should feel and see it through her perspective, and that's really nice.
Yeah, in addition to the music, I do want to say like even like the costumes and locations and stuff like that were like perfect. You felt like it was the Old West again.
Yeah.
There didn't it say like at the end it was like taking place like in some places in like Arizona and Utah. I think. It's like you saw mountains and obviously the desert and everything like that, and just with their whole costumes and get-ups, like the three men in the beginning, who were at the train track to wait for Harmonica. All of their looks were like defining. I feel like they're stunning in my opinion.
Yeah.
Like the whole duster get up and just their hats and everything like that is like I like just those three, even though they didn't show up for like a long period of time in the whole movie.
Right.
Just them looking, just seeing them on screen for the first time, it's like, oh man, they look good.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's definitely it's a look. It's like you're presented to those characters and they just feel so real, especially like with the costumes, how you're saying. And I think the dusters really add that image. Like it's such an iconic image too, because you'll see it in like promotional art. You'll see like promotional art of like the duster jackets and like the different like people, and then basically that shootout.
Right.
And it's definitely like an iconic moment, and the costumes definitely make it. I think in any of Sergio Leone's films, it's like the costumes definitely had a lot of attention, to them.
Yeah, like I was sad to see when we go to like one of the iconic scenes with Henry Fonda and Frank, he is wearing that sort of getup, but then later on, he drops it, and it makes sense for story wise.
Oh, right.
But like just I like his look at that moment in time. It makes me sad to see that he didn't keep it throughout the whole film, because it's like, oh man, I like the duster getup, and I guess everybody else in comparison, like they had some unique costumes in my mind, but for me, it's like the dusters, the standstill.
Yeah, and that's a good point to bring up, because especially that moment when they are on the McBain farm and it's that whole like massacre that Frank and his men do. it's like what an entrance. Like when he comes in, like with his men, and I think that the duster jackets definitely like help a lot.
Yeah.
And so I see what you're saying about like, oh, you kind of missed that the fact that the duster jacket look was only really in that beginning part. But like what's interesting though, and I think it helps a lot to know who Henry Fonda is and like what kind of roles he was playing at this point in time, or I would say previously, especially like in Western films or any film. He was always like the good guy, and it's crazy. That's like what makes this scene so crazy, especially at the time, because Henry Fonda was always that good guy, especially like with his really nice blue eyes. And it's Henry Fonda actually tells a story like in an interview that he did about Once Upon a Time, and he was talking about how like he like prior to going on set or prior to even accepting the job, he was a little unsure if he was gonna work with Sergio. But then like he saw some films of Sergio Leone's and he was like, okay, and he knew someone who was in it, so he called them up and he was like, they told him that like, oh yeah, just do it. And prior to him going on set, he knew what role he was about to play, and that was going to be the villain. And he was planning on like getting contacts to cover his blue eyes, and he was going to change them to be brown. And he got like these contact lenses, and he did. And he came on the set, and Sergio Leone didn't like the fact that he did that. And he was
really?
like, no, like it looks all wrong. And he told him he wanted to take it off. And Henry Fonda wasn't like quite sure why, because he kind of wanted to like change up his look, and he even grew a beard for the part. And I think it might be the same beard that we see later on towards the end.
Oh, right.
I think that's actually kind of the look that he went for.
Yeah.
So they ended up using it for that look instead of like the main one. And he was saying that like he wasn't quite sure like why he wanted him to just get rid of the contacts to keep the blue, because he thought that the blue was kind of his trademark. And it wasn't until like he saw like the shot that he was doing, and as you see in the film when he makes his entrance, like we don't see the man's face, and then it goes like we see like the young boy like in the background, like, you know, extremely, you know, deathly afraid because of these like men who just kill his family. And then in the foreground we see Frank, and then just like you know, it comes around, and then we see his face, and it's Henry Fonda. And then Henry was saying that like he could imagine, or Sergio said that he could imagine like people seeing this and saying like, "Oh, Jesus Christ, it's Henry Fonda," and that was what he was like probably imagining in that moment. And Henry Fonda like understood like what the whole significance of that moment was supposed to be like. And so like if you don't have any prior knowledge of him and his films and the types of roles he used to play, it doesn't matter as much.
I was going to say is like probably nowadays I don't think it has that effect anymore,
right?
Because it's like, again, if you don't see the films of his prior, just know his background.
Yeah,
it doesn't catch you off guard, because like, you know, today, you know, people play whatever role they want to do, right?
Yeah,
and yeah, that sort of moment might not feel as big of a presence,
right?
You know, without the prior knowledge. Because like I want to say like the only film of his I actually have watched before this one was Toy Angry Men. He was a good guy, you know, obviously, but like I'm thinking in my head is like because I have a prior knowledge with other characters like Cary Grant and Jimmy Stewart. Maybe if we saw that sort of effect to happen to them, it'd feel a bit, you know, bigger, like that. Just that moment that they were trying to capture here.
Right.
But like me, honestly, you know, watching the film, I didn't feel that sort of grand moment only because I didn't have that association with them. But I knew that, you know, obviously you've heard about this effect happening when you know, watching this film.
Yeah, and I'm sure that it was a shock for the people who watched it then, and I think it was. But like that was the whole thing that Sergio Leone was going for at that moment in time, because Henry Fonda was always the good guy. And like you, I did see 12 Angry Men prior to watching Once Upon a Time in the West, so that was the only thing that I had on him. So I did have that same. I had like a similar feeling, but it wasn't like too impactful. Or like too shocking of a moment, because I only had seen one film.
Right.
But I think had I seen more and understood like that kind of like good guy, you know, he's he's the Superman, really.
Right.
And the fact that he was playing such a villainous role, then like how crazy it must have been,
Right,
to
especially
experience
like
that.
at the beginning, he just shoots a kid basically, like
Yeah.
like out of like it's nothing, and
Right. It's like cold.
Right.
It's a complete like opposite from what he's done. So that must have been awesome. But
Right.
yeah, what a good moment.
I would say like even like eventually they even raise the stakes to like have more villainous stuff, associated with them. So yeah, again, it must have been like very shocking and stuff like that. I do want to say though, like. Do you? Because when I was watching him play this villain role, I get like Willem Dafoe vibes from him, especially when he smiles. It's like he has that sort of villain-esque thing in my mind. When I saw that, I was like, oh man, it reminds me of him in some ways.
I remember when we were watching, you said something about Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, just in
Like tone of voice.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was only thinking about Jack Nicholson, to be honest. I didn't think about Willem Dafoe, but I think that Willem could, pull off a Henry Fonda.
I think
kind of
I think it
role.
was the smile, in my opinion, when
Oh.
they did like a villainous act, and then when Henry Fonda did a villainous act and smiled, it reminded me of like a villain from like Willem Dafoe if he played it or something like
okay.
that. I was like, I got those type of vibes from
Interesting. Interesting. No, I didn't actually like specifically think about Willem Dafoe, but I can definitely see where you're coming from.
it. Yeah. I was like, I saw that association with it. I was like, oh, that's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I do want to, go into like the four main characters of Harmonica, Frank, Jill, and Cheyenne, and saying like, I honestly felt that Jill and Cheyenne were kind of like overlooked in comparison to Harmonica and Frank, only because like they had like this showdown and stuff. Like I think they played big roles and like essential to whatever the story is too. But like I feel as if once we figured out their whole thing, they're kind of left to the wayside because of we need to figure out what the association between Frank and Harmonica would lead to.
Yeah.
So in that realm, I'm like, I kind of felt like again they were overlooked once we figured out that okay, or at least for like Jill, she has the land, and people want the land from her. And then in Cheyenne's case, he was framed, and now he's just trying to clear his name.
Yeah.
And then we didn't really know why Frank was doing this whole stuff until like later on, and then we didn't even know Harmonica's whole case until like the very end.
The very end.
So like in my mind, while watching the movie, I kind of like shifted them like, okay, we understood their characters until basically Harmonica's and stuff case. I don't know if it was the same way for you when watching, but like I felt as if they were like overlooked at a certain point in the movie.
Well, I would probably say that I would call Cheyenne and Jill supporting characters, not to say that like they were they didn't play a big role in the film like you're saying, but I do think that the main story is between Frank and Harmonica, like that's who it's really between, but and I think that Cheyenne and Jill are there to give us some downtime. Because like I've always said before, like if we're always in one, for example, suspenseful moment, we can never be in that, and we need that downtime, and we need other things. Where I think that's where Cheyenne and Jill come in, and yes, I do see it in like that way where like we are learning little bits and pieces of their story and like why they're here, and then we get a little bit more of Frank and Harmonica. But yes, I do see what you mean, that it's kind of like really the main story revolves around Harmonica and Frank, and it's only a matter of time before like we actually learn their stories completely. And in the meantime, we have Jill and Cheyenne to focus on. So
I was going to say like it's kind of like I wanted them to have like another like additional moment, like like a showdown moment if that's the case. I guess for like in Cheyenne's case, I did want him to have like some sort of battle with Frank just for framing him in that sense. And for Jill's case, I guess I just wanted her to get some sort of like win moment, because like I felt as if when she arrived to the McBain farm or Sweetwater, whatever the station is called.
yeah.
she just had like a terrible time. I feel like, you know, she arrives and her family's dead, you know?
Yeah.
And then now people just want to take her to land, you know, and she's just trying to figure out why.
And kill her in the process.
Right, and kill her in the process. And then, yeah, all these like, she gets kidnapped and stuff like that, you know? Like all these terrible things happen to her. And then I feel like she never got this like redeeming real moment. It's more like she's in the presence of this other story happening, but like just forced to watch it just because that's what's happening, I guess, you know? And it's kind of like sad in that sort of scenario.
Well, would you consider, because I think I would consider the fact that she ends up keeping the land, and we know that Sweetwater is going to become a
Like prosperous, like place for
yeah,
to
like
live.
it's going to be a prosperous town in time,
Yeah.
especially with the railroad coming in. So would you consider that to be a win for her, the fact that she's
Yeah.
going to be the owner of Sweetwater?
That's true. I just, I guess I would have loved to see that, you know, and it's kind of sad that we didn't get to. Obviously, you know, we're not going to fast forward in time, right?
Yeah.
But like, I guess it was just sad to see that, you know, throughout the film, it's like she never, you know, it just seemed like she was having a rough time.
Like
you
she
know?
never really got her
Yeah,
moment.
yeah. In my opinion, I just think that I would have loved to see those type of moments in the film, and it was kind of like, oh man, we didn't. Where we're like we got a shining moment, I feel like with at least Harmonica, right, because of his whole revenge moments.
Oh yeah.
But like, yeah, for those other like supporting characters, I was like, oh man, I kind of like Cheyenne had a cool moment, you know, with on the train, you know, saving Harmonica.
Oh yeah.
But like I kind of wanted him to have like a little showdown with Frank, even though it made sense for him not to, you know, at least win in that scenario.
Yeah, and like with that, it's almost like Cheyenne's not that kind of person, even though he claims he is. Like he mentions that he's that type of person, but you can, I don't know, like you could just tell by the way he acts and his persona that he's just not that type of character to duel, really. Like he'll do it. Like, and then we saw that like when he entered and when we first met Cheyenne, and you can kind of see like there is this sort of like ruthlessness to him, but underneath it all, he's a really good guy.
Okay.
You know?
I mean, like, yeah, like by the end of it too, I think you understood that. I don't think at like the very beginning.
Very
you
beginning,
understood
no.
it.
Yeah. It's like you kind of over time you start to learn more, and that he's really just, he's really not that bad of a guy that people make him out to be, and even talked about that too, and within the film, and that you know, there's more to him than what people make him out to be.
Right. I think even like the honorary fifth character with Morton, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
Like we didn't really see too much of his whole backstory. It was like it had to be all inferred, and that to me was like a little bit like a little bit confusing, just because like
really?
Yeah, just because like I didn't know what he was doing there besides, you know, wanting the whole land, and it's kind of like I wanted to learn more with like why him and Frank, you know, were friends or worked together or whatnot, and like what his purpose and stuff like that was. Because it was a lot inferred. You had to like make it up as you go. Like, okay, yeah, this is probably what happened.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like you could possibly like not give it the due it's, you know, supposed to have. Because like I think by the end you try to understand some stuff, but you never really know, in my mind.
So did you like it, or was it something that you wanted a little bit more information?
I wanted a little bit more explanation. I wanted a little more expansion. You know,
Okay.
like it just seemed to me like the most I could really give him was that, you know, he was this rich guy who you know, had this disability and, you know, wanted to I guess do more but couldn't because of it, and was always overshadowed or overlooked just because of his disability. And so he used his money in order to get his way, but he wanted to do other stuff, but obviously he couldn't, and he never really did. That's really all I inferred.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I kind of did wanted to have like a more expanded, because he was like the honorary fifth character. We didn't really see much of his whole thing.
Right.
And it almost like at the beginning seemed that he was going to play a bigger role than what
like he was made out to be.
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny that we're kind of calling him this honorary like fifth character, and for me actually he's one of my favorite parts of this film. And I think it's really because just like how like everything that you just said, that is his character. But I think the thing that really tied me into him was the fact that he had this longing to be able to see a large body of water. Like this was like his goal to, or like one of his goals. And I guess it's the symbol to show that, like you're saying, that he wants to be able to do more and literally see more. And there was this, there's like this simplistic beauty with the fact that he wants to be closer to the nature and the body of water. Obviously, I think it's not just a literal thing. I think it is a figural thing too. But there was something, just that simplistic beauty of like him and the painting of the ocean. I love that. I was like, when I first saw that for the first time, I thought it was a really nice touch to give more than just the money and business side of his character, as well as the fact that he has tuberculosis, but understanding that there is this other thing that's like just out of his reach and it's something that he wants. And I think that simple idea was easy to understand and in some ways, especially with his condition, to feel bad for.
Yeah, I was like, I don't think I honestly understood the significance of the water while watching. Besides, like by the time he like actually died, just because of the water stream, maybe. But while watching, I don't think I put the two and two together. That he wanted to go and see this body of water, the oceans. What do they call that? Manifest Destiny, where like the two. Or going from the Atlantic to the Pacific Ocean. What's that called when going through America?
Yeah, basically just
I was like that, like a whole idea. I think maybe I don't think I put two and two together while watching.
Right, I was gonna say I think it more refers to just the idea that this open land can be ours. That's right. What it more refers to. I don't think it doesn't refer to necessarily like water, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's more about the taking over of land, so it's not quite the same.
But it's like I was just referencing it to like the idea of expanding, I guess. Like
sure. Okay. Yeah.
Their reach, and that's what I was like. Yeah, I don't think I even pieced that together while watching. Really? Yeah. I think it's because like again, maybe because I didn't really understand his place throughout the movie. Really
interesting, because I was like, I think Morton was like that like honorary / secret fifth character that I really wanted you to like, and I thought you would understand him a little bit more, and so like that's a little interesting that maybe you were a little bit confused, but that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was like. I think there's the fact that he didn't have too much screen time in comparison to everybody else.
Yeah.
And I was just trying to figure out everybody else's character purpose, probably at the same time. And like maybe I overlooked Morin's whole ideals and stuff like that. Like, again, maybe it's like I just positioned him as, this rich guy who was trying to, I positioned like he could possibly be the main villain, and that Frank was just his henchman, possibly. Like that's my thought. That's my thought at the beginning, but like later on, it kind of like evolves and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And so maybe I wanted a little bit more expansion on his character because I think there was more there to it.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, Harmonica's and Frank's. I think their whole showdown is very nice. I think they're like I do want to say though that like I kind of wish personally that they didn't have so many interactions before their final showdown. In my opinion, I would have liked to see them at least build to that intensity, even though like again by the end it kind of all makes sense why it was the way it was,
Sure.
But like watching it before we got the answer, and it was like, oh man, I kind of wish like they didn't do a whole lot of interactions beforehand, but like by the end I think it made sense, and it really had like a really nice wrap up to it.
Yeah.
But it was kind of weird, like the fact that they kind of like went to like I want to say the backyard of the farm, really, where like nobody was watching.
Yeah.
It's just them two like solo, right? It's like why not just do it right in the front area? It's kind of like they went to their own private scheme or private area because it's just only between them.
Which it was.
Right. But that was like a kind of a weird and sort of unique touch they wanted to do. Like maybe that's just they wanted that symbolic moment of it, or like possibly like they didn't have the time to do it, at that moment in time to do the thing, so they shot it some other time. Like I don't know.
Well, I think it's really because, and I guess this is just putting it simply, the fact that it's like you're saying, it's between the two of them.
Right,
so
right.
and why are we going to involve anyone else?
I wanted to believe it's that,
Yeah.
but like maybe who knows? Maybe it
Yeah,
wasn't. But
right.
like their whole whole how the camera worked, and seeing Charles's face, up there, I was like, oh, that's perfect with the music and everything.
Oh, yeah, it was really good.
I was like, oh man, really good shot,
Oh yeah, another thing I forgot to mention too is that the music was actually written written completely before stepping foot on set, and the music was actually played during when they were shooting. So like the music was actually playing in time with the scene, so they were reacting to the music.
That's gotta be cool to like act out. And
Yeah, right. So they heard it when they were doing the shootout, so that must have been sweet.
Just, blaring and scenes. That's awesome.
So like they would actually like get that feeling and I'm sure that it helps a lot too to be able to get be one with the scene. And I'm sure for like certain people, but I knew that from like interviews and stuff that they actually really enjoyed the fact that they had the music, because it did help a lot to get in the mindset of the particular scene. But yeah, like with Frank and Harmonica, I personally did like their interactions ahead of the final showdown, and this is why. It's simply because I could feel Frank's frustration every time when they had an interaction with each other, and it was good seeing that. The fact that we didn't, even the audience wasn't exactly quite sure who Harmonica was, and Frank didn't know either, and we could feel that frustration with him, and that's what was good about it. It felt like this problem that wasn't going away until he faced it. And you got that idea from their many interactions within the earlier moments of the film prior to them getting to this final showdown. And I really love that moment when Frank is riding up to the McBain farm, and the music that plays there leading up to that. It's called As a Judgment. That's what it's called. And like when we lead up to those moments, and then he gets to Harmonica, and he basically tells him, I love this line from the movie where he says that, Morton always told me that I could never be like him, and now I finally understand why. It wouldn't have bothered him knowing that you were out there somewhere still alive. And for Frank, it totally did. And he even went further to say that it's just a man's problem to another man's problem, and now we have to face it. Not to glamorize the whole the man versus man, the machismo kind of thing, not really in that particular thing, but obviously with the Western and its stereotypes, it leads into that. And it's this thing that the idea that it bothered Frank was something that I enjoyed seeing within the film, and we got that through their many interactions prior to the final showdown.
It's kind of honestly like a unique way to take it, because usually I want to say that it's swapped when it comes to like villain and hero, where it's like the hero is the one struggling, that the villain is in their presence or whatever, and then they overcome the villain. Whereas in this one, it's flipped, where it's the villain that wants to overcome the hero, but then the hero has a really a good values and ways to do whatever it is for the bad guy or whatnot. And it's kind of like a flip on the script, type of moment, where it could also be like just because also Henry Fonda's in there too, so they kind of like made it that way to like somewhat seem that he's a good guy in some other aspects, but it's like again this flip where it's like it's usually never this way, and it kind of like is you could even think that Harmonica could be the bad guy, maybe in some aspects too.
Yeah.
Because you don't really know what he's doing there, you know?
Right, and like what he's up to.
Yeah, yeah.
What did you think about like when we saw little snippets of basically like the ending?
The blur?
Yeah, the blur like snippets. What did you think about that?
I thought it was just, at first I didn't know what was happening, you know, when we saw those things. It's like, ooh, what's this, you know? Because they were just played at like different moments in time. I think it was like played, 3 times before we actually saw the final product. But like, I don't think at the beginning I was like, I had no clue what it was. I thought it was like, I thought I knew it was like a memory of some sort, but I didn't put the pieces together. I thought it was Frank walking towards it. I thought it was like maybe maybe they were partners at some point, and then he left him behind or some sort of thing, or like he helped him in some sort of scenario, but like or not helped him, but like I don't know, something else, right? I didn't expect it to be this like
like how did you feel when it was a young Frank like right there?
It was cruel, really cruel. I think once we saw, you know, like what was happening, I was like, man, it was like a what's it called? Like a goosebumps, chilling moment.
I'm getting the chills right now just talking about it. It's like the ultimate revenge story.
Yeah, it was like because we know how we talked about like this cruel moment with Henry Fonda killing the kid at the beginning. Yeah, like this one was like another
it comes full circle. Yeah,
impactful moment where like man, this is Henry Fonda doing this whole sort of like and smiling about this. You know, this whole like hideous act of basically him killing Harmonica's brother by using Harmonica to do it. Basically, it's like it's just a whole like. Oh man!
But like not only is the moment and the act of it cruel, obviously, but like it brings more significance to the harmonica itself. The actual instrument and why he plays it, and that's what like gives it its like the full circle, because now you know why he plays it and why he has it, and it just brings everything full circle and you understand it all.
Yeah. I think like also like the biggest moment was him actually like doing the exact same thing, putting it into Frank's mouth.
Yeah,
and then like obviously he didn't say anything but from his eyes you can infer that he knew now. It's like,
who he was.
Yeah. And it's like oh man, it's like it was like You can't even put into words, what type of moment like impact had on you.
Yeah, I know, because every time I watch it, and I've seen Once Upon a Time in the West so many times now, ever since I saw it that very first time, and every time I see it, I still get so excited for that big reveal of who harmonica is and what Frank means to him, and. Oh man, every time I always see like the flashbacks, the snippets when it's all blurred, I just desperately want it to become clear, because I'm just like, oh man, like I just want to see Frank walk out. And it's so cool when especially like when we were watching, even though like I didn't really get a firsthand look on like what your reaction was, but I guess I'm just like imagining like, oh man, I wonder how like someone else could feel about this moment, and how hopefully it's impactful and they understand like, oh man, this is the significance to them and their whole rivalry and their issue. And when you finally get to see it, you're just like, man, no wonder Harmonica was naming the names of people that Frank had killed, because obviously Frank's the kind of guy who doesn't even remember. He doesn't remember those people. Yeah. And
no, he did, because obviously he knew that they were dead at the very least.
Right, but I mean, like, obviously didn't, care enough about them. Yeah. And doing that to Harmonica's brother, and Harmonica having to be the one to, obviously it's not his fault, but being the one to have to like, quote unquote pull the plug was just awful, brutal.
Yeah. It's like definitely like the impactful scene by the end and stuff like that. It was also like once we do get to the end, everybody like kind of wrapping up, where like everybody's starting to like go their own ways. Like eventually Jill gets the place, and she gets that like win right there.
Yeah.
And Cheyenne is kind of like going away, and
Well, he was actually going to go to Yuma because he was traded in for the land.
Right. But it's kind of sad that we saw that he died too. Cause
Yeah,
like,
that was really sad.
I didn't want him to die.
I didn't either.
He's like, oh man. Though, like, also, like, isn't it inferred that he was the one who went to Morton's train and they had this whole like battling shots and everything?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because at first, like, I didn't know if it was just the turning of Frank's men, because you know how they're getting paid off or whatnot.
Yeah.
But like, no, I guess they had like some sort of battle duel. It's kind of weird that they didn't show anything about that, or
Well, yeah, they didn't actually show anything, but Cheyenne did mention that it looks like it was Morton who shot Cheyenne, because he said that he got scared, that Morton got scared, and Cheyenne didn't count on him shooting him. But I'm not, even to this day, I'm not, because I think when he was escaping Yuma, he ran into Morton's train. But like, why would he? Oh, okay, I think now. Okay, I think Cheyenne ran into Morton, and I think the reason why Morton got scared is because he thought that it was Frank and not Cheyenne.
I guess it's possible, yeah.
Because Morton had already paid off Frank's men to go and kill Frank, and maybe at that point,
yeah, it made sense. Yeah.
At that point, Morton probably thought that, oh no, Frank's found out and he's going to kill me, and which is why he ended up accidentally shooting Cheyenne.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
So
yeah, I was kind of sad.
And then Frank came later.
Yeah. I was kind of sad to see that whole interaction happen, but I guess that's what Western is,
Yeah, like I think death is inevitable in like a Western film, and it's like quite rare that you actually see like a group of people, or even just two, surviving towards the end. Like, it's always going to be like one person or none at all.
There could only be one.
Right, exactly.
That's
and
funny.
Obviously it was Harmonica. It was really sad, that whole moment with Cheyenne when he passed. And I remember the first time watching, I was a little confused, because it's like when he was leaving Jill's place, and he was riding his horse, like I could tell that I was like, what's wrong with him? Like when he was on his horse, like he was kind of like swaying back and forth and slouched over, and I was wondering myself, what's wrong? I was like, what's wrong with him? Is he tired or something?
Yeah.
And then once we find out, I'm like, oh man, he got shot.
I'm surprised that they kind of like continued after that. I thought they were just gonna right away and that's it.
Go their separate ways.
I was surprised that they kind of like continued, and then he died eventually. Like, I actually thought that it would have been possibly better if they just cut it. Right?
Oh, sure.
Once they both left.
Like what makes it sad too is because they made such a good team, Harmonica and Cheyenne.
Yeah.
Like, and they're both very different. So it was really sad to see that, oh man, the partnership couldn't have continued. So that sucks.
Right.
Interestingly, the movie, that part where we see him die, I guess it was cut out in the theatrical version.
Really?
You actually don't see Cheyenne die. So when you're saying that, like, oh, you wish they kind of just cut, they do. In one version of the film, we don't see Cheyenne die.
Yeah, because our Blu-ray had the restored and theatrical version. So in that one, it's not there.
I'm not exactly sure in this one, but
Okay.
in one cut of the film, Cheyenne, we don't see him die. And there's even a whole scene that's not even in this cut of the film, where there's a moment when I think it's in between that moment when we see Jill at the McBain farm, and it's night, and she has a shotgun, and then she hears harmonica in the distance. We hear the harmonica.
Oh, yeah.
And then we see like the flame go up, and she shoots in the dead air.
Yeah.
And then it like cuts to morning.
That was weird.
There's actually a scene in between, because when we see harmonica the next time, you probably didn't even catch this. He has a cut on his cheek.
I saw that. Yeah.
And that's from.
I thought he just got scraped by the gunshot or something.
No. He actually gets jumped by some people in the middle of the night, and I think it's in between there.
Oh,
It's in between there, and they cut it.
Yeah, because like when we were watching, I was like, that was just a weird cut because like it just immediately jumped from morning to night. And I didn't see the passage of time really.
Yeah,
Okay, that makes sense. A scene was completely cut there. Okay.
it was in that in between, if I'm not mistaken, and because that follow up when we see him again in the barn, he has that cut already, so it must have happened there. And I was like, oh, I've never even seen that scene before. But that's all. These things were only cut, and more was cut because the film was originally 5 hours long.
Really?
Yeah,
Jeez.
the film was originally 5 hours,
Oh,
so
man.
they had to cut it, quite a bit because this film hits close to 3 hours. It's 2 hours and 55 minutes, and so the fact that there's a whole and like another 2 hours out there, it's like oh man, like how much do they have? But I do know that those scenes were originally there, but also cut in some versions of it.
I say there are like places where I do feel like the film like kind of like cut and jumps like how did this happen sort of scenario. It's kind of like maybe just just go along with it. It's like first that scene where it just jumps from like night to morning immediately, just kind of weird.
It's very jarring.
That and like do you remember when Frank, I don't know where he was, but he went over to some place and then Morin meets him up over there.
Oh yeah,
where he like kicks him down. That whole scene.
Yeah.
How did Morin get over there?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too. I always never quite understood that whole bit.
And like, where is Frank? It's like,
yeah, because I think I'm not sure. It's some kind of secret hideout.
Okay.
It has to be.
yeah, I just assumed like, oh, this is some other area that they go to, but like,
It's never really explained.
yeah, okay.
I think every time I see it, I just think to myself, it's some secret hideout of Frank's, and I just leave it at that. But I always do think that this is a little weird. Like, when did Morton get off the train? How did he even get here?
Well, I assumed like at the very least, Harmonica and Cheyenne just let him go because they didn't see him as a threat. But like the
Right.
fact that like how did he get over there? It's like,
Yeah, it's a little strange.
Yeah.
It must have been somewhat close to the train, right? It had to have been.
I don't know.
I don't think riding on horseback for Morton is that great.
Can he even do it?
I'm not sure. Probably not. So
Yeah.
like that's a good point. Like how does he even get there? I like that's even a confusing thing that it's not quite explained.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, but I think overall, like, I think there was enjoyable stuff throughout the film, and like there was like again like there's certain moments and stuff like that. But like I think maybe I was just a little bit confused throughout the film on like why certain pieces were this way, and maybe there wasn't a whole lot. I wanted a little bit more in depth in certain areas. And it could also just be like I do have some sort of like little bias with westerns, and just maybe not understanding their pacing, just like the whole idea of the West.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I guess it just led me to like I like certain moments when they happen, but like other things like why was this way, and could we have done it a little bit differently in this other way? But like
Sure, yeah.
overall, like music, costumes. Again, certain aspects. Like it was an enjoyable experience, right?
Yeah.
Right? But like again, I do want to say like at some points like, I was like, there's like a up and down scenario where there was good highs and there was also like a little bit for me like some lows.
Yeah. I think I've mentioned this before that I feel like to a certain extent when watching this film, it helps to have seen some at least one other Western, okay? Because for me, every other Western that I have ever seen, I'm just not as happy with it every time when I compare it to Once Upon a Time. Every Western that I have seen after this one, it just never quite measures up to it. And that's not necessarily a bad thing because obviously all these other Westerns can be different. But I do want to say that I think I think it helps to watch at least one other one. You don't have to. This can be your very first Western film. But I think if you have all these other bits and pieces of understanding, like, yes, the stereotypes, but also just different stories and different elements, you start to realize how much of like a love child Once Upon a Time in the West is. It's like it's it's like a it's like this mixture of different Western films all packaged into one and doing different things. Because like one, for example, is that we don't see typically we don't see a leading lady in the leading role. Like we typically don't see that as often in a Western film. Even like how you mentioned with our villain kind of being the one who's struggling against the hero is something that you don't normally see either. And I think that in just the spaghetti westerns, I think it's a little bit more glamorous, especially like with the music. It adds to this idea, this glamorous idea of the West and what they're like making it out to be. Whereas I feel like in a typical Western film, it's a little bit more like gritty and a lot more like you can feel the like more like the more machismo kind of ideology there, and it feels a little bit more dated. And I feel like Once Upon a Time in the West isn't that as much. I think it takes these little things from other films, not particularly, just more like maybe stereotypical things, and even criticizes them too. Although it's painting a glamorous picture of the West, it also criticizes things of the West as well. And I liked seeing that within Once Upon a Time, because it's not always about the man is gonna reign supreme and he's gonna be the one to like have the woman and ride off into the sunset. And I think some of those like earlier Western films did things like that, or it's like the damsel in distress. And I think that Once Upon a Time in the West is not that kind of film. But with that being said, I still think that it's worth seeing those other things, because if you know like these bits and pieces from Western films, you start to compare it to, then you're like, I kind of do like this bit, but I don't like this other bit. And then I feel like Once Upon a Time in the West brings it to a better place, in my opinion. Yeah, I think the music's just great. Like the music just really adds to that idea and the effect. It just does something else. It takes it from the ground and then it brings you up like a whole like 10 feet, probably higher. Like the music, I'm just amazed that the music was completely written prior to the film even being shot.
Never happens usually.
Right. It's always the reverse, usually, typically. So the fact that it was written prior to the film is crazy. And it's awesome to see how they were actually able to like sync up images or, add to character development and give them this unique theme. And we could actually like have this sense of character within that. So I think there's it's a great job there. And yeah, every time I think about it, I'm just like, it just feels almost unreal, the fact that something like that was actually able to happen, especially for how long this movie is and and where things were supposed to go. And it's like, wow. And now that I'm remembering, there's this one moment, like I was like kind of going back to what I was saying about like Once Upon a Time in the West is a mixture of all these other things, and obviously other future films have been inspired by it too. Please tell me that you noticed the moment when Jill came off of the train when she was introduced and she was going through like the ticket office or like train station. Yeah,
obviously.
I was like, I remember when I watched Once Upon a Time in the West for the first time, it was like there's this moment where the camera comes over that like train station.
Yeah.
And it like reveals the town. and that reveal is the same like camera movement that they used in Back to the Future Part 3, the Western one,
the old Hill Valley or whatever.
Right. I obviously, like as a kid, I had seen all the Back to the Future movies already prior to this film. So when I saw it in Once Upon a Time in the West, I was like, oh, so this is where Back to the Future Part 3 took it from, and I had no idea. And it's just crazy that like in the influence that this film has on other films, not just Western ones, but like in other things as well. But I just think that like once you see this, it's hard to find anything that like tops it, like in areas of like costume and music and the acting and the story. I just like these different characters that we have. The one like the harmonica, the guy who just we don't know much about, and then we have Henry Fonda, who is this guy who's supposed to be the good one, but he's the villain in this role and shocking. We have Cheyenne, who's like this nice like sidekick character. Then we have Jill, who's the one who wants to be stronger and is stronger, and it doesn't really like take crap from people, and it's awesome. And we have Morton's character with the attachment with to do more and have the sea and the business and the railroad, even all these things. It's like everything you would want out of a Western, it's in this movie, in my opinion, and it's hard to find it anywhere else. And I definitely recommend this movie to anyone and everyone. They should see it. It's, in my opinion, probably Sergio Leone's best Western. He has the Clint Eastwood films, which is like, it is up here. It's on another level for people. But man, Once Upon a Time, it's just different. Like, it's just different. And it's going to go down and has gone down as the greatest Western of all time. So there we have it. Sergio Leone's epic spaghetti Western, Once Upon a Time in the West. We hope you enjoyed listening to this episode, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The End Credits. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at The End Credits Podcast, and over on Twitter at The End Credits. If you're watching the video version, make sure to subscribe to the End Credits YouTube channel. That's it. Thank you and goodbye.